Week 1 of the Gygax 75 challenge is done. Let's take a look at what we've done and what we have in store for us for week 2. I'm Tristan, and this is Heroes in Homebrew. Let's get at it. So, this video is a little bit later than the 1 week time limit we have for Gygax 75. Life happened, and I had other things I needed to do instead of make a video, so that's what it is. But I got the first part of the challenge done. I've come up with my ideas for my setting and the influences I'm going with. So we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to take a look at what we have to do for week 2. Week 2 looks like it's going to be fun because it's all about creating the surrounding area of where our players are going to be starting. So we get to draw on a hex map, all that fun stuff. So let's take a look at the notebook. So if you remember, this is my fun little notebook that I made. It's upside down. It's just construction paper, and I sewed the seam there with some basic printer paper. So what do we have? This is my pitch. And if you're following along, if you're doing this challenge too, you know that the first week we're doing a pitch, basically our ideas for the setting. So my ideas are starting with humans are the dominant heritage. I'm using heritage instead of race, background, whatever you want. Dwarves and elves do exist. They live in small tribes scattered throughout the world, and they're also derivatives of humans. So just like if you look at the evolution of humans, there's all these different branches that all existed at the same time. This is kind of the same thing. So dwarves are, like we expect dwarves to be, a little bit shorter, live mostly underground in mountains and whatnot, quarries. Elves, I picture them being a little more in tune with nature, living in forests or on plains in tribes, sort of a kind of like Native Americans in North America, or indigenous people throughout the world, stuff like that. The world is rebuilding after a huge cataclysm. So just a few centuries after a cataclysmic event destroyed the advanced nations, mankind is slowly rebuilding. The ruins of the pre-apocalypse nations can be found all over the landscape. So there was advanced civilization, and now it's sort of rebuilding. I like that idea that kind of explains why there's ruins everywhere and why, there's dungeons and these lost cities. I kind of want to hold on to that idea. So that's why I went with this cataclysmic event, because it's something that I heard of and saw in a documentary series, and I thought it was a cool idea. So we're going with that. There's huge expanses of wilderness between settlements. Cities are rare and usually found on the coast. Towns and villages are widely spaced out. This gives us a lot of chance for hex crawling. Very few people can harness magic, and those who do risk corruption. So magic is very dangerous, often very feared among different civilizations and cities and stuff. So the knowledge of how to use magic has been lost. Those who try to harness it tread a dangerous path, and they risk humanity with every spell. So there's a cost to using magic. And the ancient gods are silent. The old gods have fallen silent. There's no clerics and any faith-based spells like divine intervention, things like that, don't exist. They no longer hear or care about the prayers of man, and the world is alone. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that the gods won't come back, but for the time being, it's sort of like a godless world. And maybe like the old gods that used to be worshipped before the cataclysm, people could still worship them. Maybe they're seen more as cults as new religions rise up, things like that. So for my inspiration, I've used Ancient Apocalypse, which is a documentary series on Netflix. Regardless about whether or not you agree with the ideas that they put forth in that series, it's not about aliens building pyramids, stuff like that, but it's very much about like if there was a lost civilization that was destroyed, did they sort of were there survivors from that cataclysm and did they spread out their knowledge throughout the world? It's kind of like I kind of use that as sort of the basis of this world. Conan, sort of Bronze Age civilization. I've been reading a lot of Conan lately, so that's very much in my mind. The Art of Frank Frazetta and Boris Vallejo very much falls in line with Conan and the Call of Cthulhu mythos because I like the idea of maybe using some of those old gods as the gods that have fallen silent or maybe the cults worship. So that is it. That's all I have for week one. Week one's a pretty basic. You can see I haven't even started week two yet, so I gotta get on that. So next, what do we have in store for week two? So week two, we're gonna be working on the surrounding area. Let's see what Gary Gygax has to say about that. So week two, surrounding area, map the land around the dungeon and town. Gygax suggests sitting down with a large piece of hex ruled paper and drawing a large scale map. A map with a scale of 1 hex equals 1 mile will be about right for player operations. That's probably what I'm going to use. Normally I would use like maybe 6 miles to a hex, but for this I'm going to use 1 mile equals 1 hex, or 1 hex equals 1 mile. Will be about right for player operations such as exploring, camping, adventuring, and eventually building their strongholds. Even such small things as a witch's hut and side entrances to the dungeon can be shown on the map. The central features of the map must be the major town and dungeon entrance. So those are the minimal that we got to show. But our tasks for this week are, you're going to get a sheet of hex paper. It's very easy to find hex paper, whether you might already have a notebook that has hex paper in it. It's easy to download. I think DriveThruRPG there's several bundles on there that are pay what you want or even free. You can download and get the right size of hex paper that you want. Draw the following items on it. Name anything worthy of a name. If you don't feel comfortable drawing, lots of hex mapping programs are available. I'm fond of HexKit by Negative Cone of Energy. So that's Ray Otis likes HexKit. If you have a pro subscription to Incarnate, you can put a hex grid on that. There's Hexographer. There's all sorts of programs out there that allow you to do hex maps. I'm probably going to draw mine by hand. I enjoy it. Maybe I'll do a quick video on how I'm doing that. So we also need one large settlement. Define large however you like. So it could be a giant city, could be, several hundred people. It's up to you. 2 other settlements, camps, larger or smaller towns, a keep, a home base of a fantasy race, etc. So likely what I'm going to put on mine is I'll have the starting city or starting town. I'll probably have a tribe of elves somewhere and maybe a dwarven mine in the mountains. So you kind of have access to all those races, and if players want to play a elf or a dwarf, it would make sense of why they might be in that town. 1 major terrain feature covering at least 3 hexes, so a lake, a river, mountains, desert, whatever, something like that. 1 mysterious site, ruins, dead forest, things like that. 1 dungeon entrance at least. So my phone just beeped off. Sorry about that. One dungeon entrance at least. So we're going to be in week 3. We're going to be building this dungeon, so you need at least 1 entrance to it. I'm probably going to have several entrances, and that'll allow the players to sort of like do the dungeon and then maybe come up somewhere else, and they'll have to find their way back. And key your map. The easiest way to do this is probably to number the rows and letter the columns. This will give you coordinates to reference. Note down the names of places and terrain types using these coordinates, or write them down directly on the map. So you could do like number them 1 to 10 or 1 to 14, however many rows you have, and then A through whatever for the columns. I'm probably just going to number the locations themselves. So I'll be like location 1, location 2, things like that. And just keep it simple, and that way I'm, depending on what type of hex pepper I use, I don't have to add the numbered and lettered rows and columns. And that way I can take other hex paper maps and like put them together. I have an idea for that, which I'll go over maybe after we're done the Gygax 75. I'll go over how to expand it, because week 5 of Gygax 75 is expanding your area. I have an idea of how I can take different single hex areas and sort of put them together. Regarding scale, Radios goes over how to scale. So if your hex paper contained 23 by 14 hexes, a scale of 1 mile to 1 hex would represent an area equal to 322 miles squared, which is a lot of terrain for your players to cover. So it's more than enough to play, like 10 sessions in if you wanted to. About half the size of Greater London. A 1 to 6 scale, so it would be 1 hex equals 6 miles, would represent 12,432 miles squared, roughly a third of the size of Ireland. You could play your entire campaign in that area. You may be tempted to go big, but the goal is to define one area in which characters can adventure. You don't need the map to map the whole world. Scales are larger than 6 miles per hex should be dismissed out of hand. So if you're thinking 18 miles or 32 miles per hex, don't even try it. Like, there's no point. There will be time to draw a larger scale map in week 5. That's where we're going to go and draw either our continent or even our entire world. A lot can be done with just a few hexes. That's very true. So for extra credit, we're going to pimp our map, stain it with coffee, burn the edges a little, or add some color. This will make your map feel like a real document and or give some presence to the table. So what I'm probably going to do is I might go over it with pen. I might stain it. We'll see. We'll have some fun with it. Create a random encounters table. I'm definitely going to do this. Mostly because my idea is to have fewer pure, like, high fantasy sort of creatures. We're going to be looking at more sort of megafauna, like giant spiders and giant mammoths and saber-toothed tigers, things like that. Although there will be some crazy elements to it. Make a 2d6 table, 11 slots numbered 2 to 12. Put the least dangerous, most common encounters in the middle of the table, and the rarest ones on the top and bottom of the list. Consider making a few of the encounters interesting NPCs. I also suggest including adventure hooks, like 2d4 goblins looting the corpse of a dead noble, instead of just writing 2d4 goblins. That's a good point. That way you're building in hooks that your players can play off of. And you too, you're not struggling to find a reason for why the goblins would be there, So, like, and we're going to look at this more when we do the dungeon too, but we want the world to feel alive and not just static until the players arrive. So that's why adding the adventure hooks is good to your random table. You're not just going to have 6 goblins just standing there waiting for your players to arrive. It's not a video game where the creatures just like until a fight breaks out. So we want to add some life to that. And that's it. So we're going to do our hex map or a hex drawing. I might film myself drawing it and coming up with it. We'll see. Maybe I'll put that out as an extra video. I hope you guys are following along. I know some of you just said that you were going to try it out. I want to see what you're doing. If you want, send me your work to heroeshomebrew at gmail.com, and at the end of all this, maybe I'll take what everyone's done and go through it together. I'm really excited to see what you guys are coming up with. As always, have fun with this, and like, subscribe if you like what I'm doing. And that's it for me. So save a spot for me at your table. Later.